Mackenzie Porter, recently reviewing the musical show Harry's Back in Town, pointed out that none of the 7 actors was presented as a star, but the youthful, foxy-faced Martin Short, a longtime favorite in review and mini-musicals, distinguished himself. Martin Short, he wrote, moves into a character with a form of restrained frenzy, a manic, kinetic verve, projecting humor tinged with poignance, and singing loud and clear, his mouth rolling lovingly over every word so that he drives home the full meaning of every lyric. Thousands of Canadians know Martin Short as the regular on the David Steinberg Show, Johnny Del Bravo. He is now a member of Second City, and we'll be right back with Martin Short. Martin Short, currently with Second City, is with us. When we were coming on, we were exchanging anecdotes about people, and we were talking about Oscar Levant's wonderful book. Was it Memoirs?
Memoirs of Amnesiac.
And you asked me if can we say it on the air?
Well, sure.
What was the story?
No, he was talking about how he would interview people, and he would say terrible things about close friends, and realize afterwards, gee, I've lost another friend. He said he called Judy Garland the S. Scott Fitzgerald of song, and he said she was a vibrato in search of a voice. And he said it on the air, and then he thought, and he quickly phoned up Judy, and he said, you won't believe what I've just said. And she, howled and screamed and went hysterical, and he went, okay, she's still my friend. And
what was the line with Martin from the Jerry Lewis interview with Oscar?
He was interviewing Jerry Lewis, and he said to Jerry Lewis, who is your God? And Lewis said, Milton Berle. And he said, you aim so high. And he knew that that was it. I mean, Berle would not have anything to do with him, and didn't.
I should explain that all of this came about because we were talking about people we both know and appearing on talk shows, and the difficulty of a performing artist suddenly being in a situation where it's dialogue, and there's nothing happening, and how
especially a show like this where you are going to try in a half an hour to have the public kind of know what someone is like, and it's not like going out and doing a few minutes of comedy or a song or something and then sitting and moving down, and it's, I guess, a little intimidating for some.
Well, I think the only thing that's intimidating is that I'm sitting here with a man who was born in Hamilton and maybe one of the few people in show business who has a BA in psychology and sociology and a BA in social work.
Yeah.
Was that in preparation for a life in show business, a BA in social work?
No, it was just, I still am very involved in social work, and I still am involved with taking out kids, and I might end up doing that someday, but throughout university, I was aware that I was spending an equal amount of time doing plays and theater, and I came to a point where I knew I had done 4 years of university, and I was about to do a master's degree, and I thought, now, should I investigate this other interest? So I did, and a friend of mine, Eugene Levy, who's a pretty talented performer in town.
True.
Kept saying, Marty, you gotta come to Toronto, you gotta come to Toronto, they'll love you, they'll love you. And it turned out that at that time he wasn't working, he just wanted another friend to drink with.
Will you tell us how far away you were when he said you've got to come to Toronto?
I was in Hamilton.
True. No, I just wanted to establish the distance.
No, it's 30 miles. But he meant to live and to struggle, so I decided to struggle for a year. And then I was very, very fortunate because it was a show called Godspell that was auditioning, and what they wanted raw talent. They wanted people who could sing, but not that great, people who could dance, but people who were funny, but and if you were slick, you were not valid for Godspell. So that was like the greatest training ground. I did it for a year, and it was the first audition that I did, and I got up and sang, "My funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine," and just, and I couldn't believe it.
It's wonderful, though. You talk about Godspell, 1972.
Yeah.
Tell us, excluding yourself, who else was in that company of Godspell, now when you look over that company?
Well, Victor Garber, Jerry Salzberg, Rudy Webb, Don Scardino were the men, and the women were Gilda Radner, Andrea Martin, Nancy Dolman, Jane Eastwood.
Talk about raw talent getting together, and 5 years later.
It was Avril Chow. It was a fabulous
Wasn't Eugene Levy in that show?
Did I leave out Eugene?
Only because you'd mentioned him earlier.
Oh my God.
Do you know something that I think you've done particularly well? the season with David Steinberg and the Johnny Del Bravo character. How did it come about? Did you go to them and present Johnny Del Bravo, or were you cast as Johnny Del Bravo?
No, they wanted, David Steinberg came to Toronto, and he spoke to Sheldon Patinkin, who was and is the director of Second City. And he knew Sheldon for many years from Chicago when David was in Second City, and said, gee, first of all, give me the talent in town and who I can possibly use on my show. And the one character that he wanted was, David has a particular dislike for club singers. And he wanted to have a running character of a club singer that he wouldn't like, who would play his cousin. And so I went in to speak to David about it, and he said, no, we don't really know what kind of character we want, but we want him to be offensive on some level. So I did an impersonation of a character that I'd done for a couple years in my own mind, of someone who had watched Sinatra and Tony Bennett and copied them and idolized them, but there was one catch: he couldn't sing. So that he had all the, yeah, thank you, it's groovy to be here, you're fabulous, I love you, you know, kind of a la David Brenner, but beyond. And so that was the character, and that's what we used in the show.
Whose idea was the wig?
The wig was, well, originally the fellow looked a little too young, so they decided to put a wig on me just to try it out, and I looked so bizarre that that's the look.
Were the lines yours? How does a character like that evolve on a show like the Steinberg Show? Were there production meetings every week?
Yeah.
And a spot was found to put Johnny Del Bravo in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and usually it was used to get David from the stage setting to across the street to the delicatessen setting. And what better way than to have Johnny Del Bravo, who David hated, and would therefore not want to be in the studio when Del Bravo was on, but he could watch Del Bravo on the monitor in the delicatessen, and when Del Bravo... and there'd be a running kind of gag where, you know, Steinberg would say, now, please, Johnny, do not do any impersonations. We get letters, people hate your impersonations. Please just sing the song. And, all right, David, you're groovy, and I definitely won't. And then he leaves, and then 5 minutes later, when we want to return back to the studio, someone would turn up the monitor, and the delicatessen, and Billy Saluga, who played Vinnie DeMilo, would say, hey, Dave, Del Bravo's, you better see what he's doing. And David would say, don't worry, Vinny, it's no problem at all. He's singing What Now, My Love. And Vinny would say, yeah, but it's Betty Davis. And you turn, what now, my love, now that I've left? So he has to run across the street and push me out there, you see.
Is the show going to be back in '78? Are you going to be back with Steinberg?
No, I don't think the show is going to be back in '78. There were, I think the problem with the show really was, as so many shows, a financial problem. And the two best shows that were done one per week. And there were only 2 shows out of 26 done that way. The rest were done 2, 3, and even 4 a week. And it was just too rushed for the writers, it was too rushed for David, it was rushed for everybody. And I think that he chose that to not come back unless more money was available, and it wasn't, so he's not going to come back.
Did you go after the spot with the resident company of Second City? Did you want to be a permanent member of that resident company?
Well, I wanted to do I've always been a big fan of Second City, and my friends have done it for years and years, and I always was very attracted to it, except that I knew that I wouldn't do well in it unless I really wanted it very much, not if someone else said, hey, Marty, do you want to do Second City? So I knew that I had to wait until I wanted to do it. And I was recently in Los Angeles, and I saw an improvisational group called War Babies. And I thought I just loved what they were doing. I sat there and I thought, yeah, I want to come back and do Second City. So I came back and gave them a phone call and said if there's any openings to give me a call. And
you said, I'm available.
I'm available.
As they say in the biz.
I'm ready.
You didn't see the group at that place in L.A. called the Comedy Store, did you?
No, I didn't.
No? Have you been to that club?
Yeah. That's great fun, too. But that's a different type of thing. I mean, that's just comedians trying out things and young comics. And you sit there and oh, what would I be doing? I'd be terrible, I'd be good, or whatever.
Okay. Tell you what, we'll take a commercial break.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Martin Short, Second City, and more. Martin Short is with us, and we've been talking about Second City, the David Steinberg Show, life, BAs in social work and psychology. I wanted to pick up on something because I was reminding myself and you that one thing that I had enjoyed particularly was when you and Andrea Martin had done a production of Elaine May's very black comedy, Enough Rope. And you,
Not Enough Rope.
Oh, sorry, Not Enough Rope. And you had made an observation about acting and the performing artist and performing, which I thought was interesting.
Well, right. At that time, Andrea and I were both very concerned because we were doing a straight play to perform our acting. And so many actors act their acting beautifully, and you sit and watch them and you say, gee, that's acted beautifully, and it's boring too. And some actors have an instinctive ability to perform their acting. Andrea is certainly one. Jane Eastwood is another. Eugene Levy is another. Dave Thomas at Second City are another. Katherine O'Hara, the list, I won't go on.
Well, if you add Fiona Reed, we have every show
in town
Fiona
covered.
Reed.
I mean, no, really, these are the people that instinctively do it. What Andrea and I were doing, we were talking about in the early rehearsals of Not Enough Rope, we were so busy worried about, oh, no, we've got to perform this. And the first preview of Not Enough Rope, we went out, and there was not one laugh. It was so heavy and dramatic and tragic. And we realized that we were so busy worrying about the performing end of it that we weren't having fun with it. And the next night we went out and just did Andrea and Marty having fun with Elaine May, and it was, we loved doing that play.
When you say that you see a group like, was it War Babies?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you something. When you talk about the actor performing his material, who have you seen recently, or who do you look at as an actor who performs his or her material from whom you learn, or you feel a sense of, I want to do that, or I've learned something new about my own craft? Film, theater, television,
yeah,
any media.
Well, I think that Al Pacino does that. And I think that Brando does that very much. Brando does a thing in On the Waterfront, which is just, I've seen it a billion times and always cry when he finds Charlie hanging, and he says, and just don't leave Charlie. And it's a very stagey move when he and Eva Marie have run down the alley and they see Charlie Rodsteiger hanging there. And he's saying, I'm going to take it out of their hides. And it's always, it's just a little bigger. But it's so effective because he's just performing. And another thing he'll do is if I'm Brando and you're Rod Steiger, he'll look at Steiger and he'll say, wasn't my night, Charlie? Wasn't my night? It's looking off there basically to the audience and looking back. It's kind of a gutsy thing to do, but it works beautifully, and that's why he's never dull. He may be hammy, or he may be whatever some critics say of him, others never criticize him. He's never dull, and it's because of that natural instinct. I don't even think he's aware of it. John Candy of Second City is another one who just, maybe it's just presence or something, or maybe it's just an ability to really enjoy an audience. But I'll always watch Brando, and I'll always watch Pacino, and always watch Dustin Hoffman, and always watch Burton, because they...
You mean Richard Burton?
Richard Burton, yes. No, well, Sybil Burton is great too.
No, she's a better dancer.
Yeah, right. But they have an ability to not internalize to the extent of excluding us. And that's, I'm really very fascinated by that.
I find it fascinating that the North American performer is so in tune with whatever it is that Brando, Pacino, De Niro, Hoffman is sharing with them. And I remember just recently reading an interview with Al Pacino, which was called The Basic Training of Al Pacino, and Pacino saying that every American actor has a debt to Brando because Brando created an American style. And when you really think over the whole history of American film and theater acting, it was a complete revelation and revolution in acting.
Yeah, I mean, I saw East of Eden, as opposed to East of Eden's at Second City, and I hadn't seen it for a long, long time. It was James Dean's first film, and he really was very, very Brando-ish. I mean, it was just, you know, all this stuff, which he wasn't so much in the next two films. And he didn't really need to be, because he had this great face and these great eyes. But you could see that there was a kid who had looked at Brando, and I read a book on Brando. Maybe it was a little favorite in Brando's favor, but they said that Brando was asked about Dean's performance in East of Eden, and he said, the actor was wearing my last year's performance, you know. So he obviously, it was kind of understood in, I guess, the business at the time that he was this new kid who was doing Brando, but doing something of his own, too, and with a kind of unique quality to it that was also very interesting. In his next two films, Rebel Without a Cause and Giant, he showed that he really dismissed, he just took the method acting and left the Brandoisms aside, which were wise moves.
You know, speaking of great names, and other than those appearing in East of Eden's Second City
I know,
Fire
I'm
Hall
plugging
with you.
everybody. You know, let me just say, it's one of these things, when you do a show like this and someone says, did you mention my name? I mean, and now I can just say yes to almost everyone.
I think we got them all. If we include Monica Parker, we covered the city.
Oh, okay, Monica Parker.
Yes. I wanted to bring up something because, do you remember one evening after a performance,
Let me second guess you, Brian.
and we had all seen an interview, and we started talking about Dick Cavett interviewing guess who? And out of absolutely nowhere, I asked you a question, and I was being Cavett, and you were being Katharine Hepburn.
That's true. And I remember you were, you don't smoke, but you got so excited that you said, okay, let's do it now. Oh, what the heck? You got a cigarette.
And I've been smoking ever since.
I know.
But
I tried to
can
cover
you pull
that.
it up? Can you pull it out? If I say,
Okay, well, let me, can I move a table?
if you want to go out of your key light and be in very dramatic shadow, which may indeed make you look more like
Move
Katharine
this
Hepburn.
table?
Yes, you may. Pull
Yeah.
it out.
As you'll see, it's quite
Take it.
necessary.
Sure, Ovaltine. I would like you to know what a thrill it is for all of us that you have consented to be here.
Yeah, well, it is not easy for me to do a show like this. My brother told me, Kate, why do a show when you're already loved by a nation? And I said, because I'm afraid of it. I truly am. I'm terrified of the cameras and the color and the possibility that I might look like a complete fool. And I'm attracted to it, too. Spencer used to say that to be frightened by something you're frightened of is pretty silly. And I agreed with him on lots of things, and I agree with what he said, yeah.
Are you pleased that you consented, that you're here now, speaking the way you are?
Not really.
Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable?
Well, I suppose if you just turn off the cameras and we go to my home, that would make me a lot happier, but I'm here, and I've got to weather whatever I've gotten myself into.
Do you remember the time we appeared on the same stage together?
I believe you'll have to freshen my memory. Just a little.
Shakespeare in the Park.
Oh, really? What was your role?
I was the king.
How vivid.
I was a page. 2 lines.
Let's hear them.
Do you know I can't remember them? I was so in awe of being on the stage with you.
Well, I'm sure I would have been in awe of being on the stage with you had you delivered memorable line readings.
Well, thank you. I'll think that over.
Well, do.
How do you feel?
Oh, well, yes.
about all the things that are being written about you in the unauthorized biographies?
Oh, I think they're a bit of a sham. Because what truly is a private person's life should remain a private person's life. I don't pretend to be anything more than what I am, a diligent actress trying to carve out something. But to read in print private moments, I don't know. It makes me feel just dreadful, just awful.
I thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
these. We'll be right back with Martin Short, Second City, and more. It really is Martin Short with us. We've been talking around a lot of things. I would like to ask you something. After the television work, we've been talking about the Steinberg Show, the review you've done, all of the work in Toronto, around the country, industrial shows, pilots for CBC, everything that's happening. Why did you make the commitment to Second City? As a man who seems so busy professionally, why commit yourself to a small, yet prestigious, theater group? What do you expect to get out of Second City?
I think that Second City offers so much. It's unbelievable how much it can offer an actor. First of all, it teaches you how to write. Everything that we do in Second City, we write ourselves. And just that, I mean, I would like to someday maybe write a play. I would like to someday maybe do monologues. And this is the perfect testing ground for anything that might come into my head, anything I might read that day or I want to talk about. It also, ensemble acting with the quality of actors that are in Second City is just something that very, very few actors have a chance to take a crack at. And I'll stay with Second City as long as I can learn as much as I've been learning by being with it. I couldn't be more pleased with my decision to finally do it, and with the amount of material that I've learned from it. I think that any actor should take a stab at it if he really feels like he's at a point in his life where it's time to take a big chance and see how much he can grow.
Was David Steinberg ever a member of Second City, Marty?
Oh, yeah.
He was?
For 6 years in Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah. And he just recently came to Toronto upstairs from us to work and try new material. Because he feels so at home with the whole atmosphere that is Second City and the tradition that is Second City, which is now, I believe, almost 20 years old.
Are you still involved with that? What is the children's group that you're involved with in Hamilton, working with children?
What, here at the Children's Aid
in Toronto?
Yeah, I take out a little boy, Brett Johnston.
Has Brett been to Second City?
No, I had his mom see what she thought. And she went, she loved it, but she thought it was a little, Brett's just turned 10. And it was a little funky,
For a 10-year-old.
to say the least, yeah.
I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you,
It's been a
Brian.
pleasure.
It's been fun.